My name's Vicky and I'm an addict.
Okay.
And thanks Ellie for asking me to come this evening to share for you all. I've got no idea whatsoever what I'm going to say tonight. But I think I'll start off by saying that I'm 21 years clean and sober, and that to me is just incredible. When I came back off the back of a relapse, my focus was to get to that year because I kept falling short. I'd fall short of the 9 months and then I'd get to 6 months and I wanted to get that year, and here I am 21 years later, and it's been an incredible journey. Sometimes it's been really difficult, but on the whole it's been far, far better than it was when I was using, and I'm really grateful that chaos is behind me. And I always kind of start my shares at the beginning and what it was like when I was a kid. I felt really unsure of where my place was in the world. I felt really uncomfortable in my own skin. I guess some people would say, I was looked after in the sense that I was clothed, I was fed, and I had a roof over my head. But as far as any kind of emotional support, there was nothing there, and obviously I didn't know that at the time. But my mum's father was an alcoholic, and she was brought up a Catholic, but she wasn't a Catholic by the time she had me, so there was that kind of weirdness there. And my dad was brought up in a religious cult that he was thrown out of at the age of 17. So both parents had some strange ideas. And my mum died when I was 11, and I always blamed my using on that. I always thought, that's why I use drugs. If your mum had died, then that's what you do too. And when I came back into recovery, I didn't believe that was the case, because I'd read this book called A Child Called It, and he had some horrific stuff happen to him, far worse than my life had been. And he didn't grow up like I did. He didn't grow up drinking and using, and that was the first kind of idea that I had, that anything that happened didn't have anything to do with the fact that my mum had died, but it was a good excuse. And that excuse carried on, all the way throughout my using. I kind of complied my way through school mostly. It was the last 2 years that I was just really angry. I had nowhere to process the feelings that I was going through. And my dad had met someone else, so it was kind of like my dad and my stepmum and me and my brother, and there was a separation within the family that was quite difficult to deal with. And my behaviour just went right off the wall. Anything I was told to do, I did the opposite. And I was going to be the last authority on my life. And I started drinking at the age of 6, clearing up after these dinner parties that my mum and dad used to have, minesweeping the bottles and the leftovers. And I can remember at a really young age just wanting to be old enough, because there was a lot of drink around when I was a kid, to be old enough to be able to do what the grown-ups did. I don't recall my mind altering at that point. I do recall fear that I was going to get found out, so I'd do the clearing up and get told I was a good girl. Like I say, by the time I got to my mid-teens, I was kicking off and I was rebelling, and there was a lot of trouble at home, and I hated my life at home. I absolutely hated it. My dad would expect me to be in at 9 o'clock. My mates were out till 11, 12 o'clock. None of my friends were good enough. Do you know what, out of all those friends, the only one that ended up like I did was me. And I wasn't allowed people in the house. It was just very, very strange. And in the end, I can remember going out and getting really, really drunk and trying to walk home, but the lampposts were jumping. So I went back to where this party was, and I couldn't go to work the next day because I was sick as a dog, and they called my dad, and my dad was just like, that's it, you're going. And I was 17 then. And then just before, he said, oh, you can stay if you like. And I just thought, I've had enough of the drama. I want to be able to go and do what I want to do. So I moved in to a friend's place, and that was it. All systems go. And and my using, my drinking took off. There was no one to tell me what to do. I probably slept about 3 hours a night. I worked. I cried a lot, probably because I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't eating properly. And my using progressed. And I was always told, don't take drugs, it's dangerous. So, I was just that kid that was like, well, I'm going to do it and I'll decide whether it's good for me or not. And my using was quite slow in progression in comparison to others. I liked squat parties, I liked partying in the woods, I liked festivals. And it says in the big book, doesn't it, we seek out sordid places. I loved a sordid place. I was never one of these kind of nightclub girls. It just wasn't my scene. I felt really, really uncomfortable in that kind of environment. And because my mum had died at 34, I just thought, I've just got to have fun, because I could be dead at 34. And I really believed that would be the case. And when I turned 40, I was quite surprised. And my using just, every drug that I could get my hands on, some I liked, some I took regularly that I didn't like, and some I was able to stop because I really couldn't stand the way they made me feel. And I always said I'd never touch heroin. I knew somewhere inside that would be the one. And it was never really in my circle. In my hometown's small, and there was that group over there, the punks and the squatters, they all used the heroin, and then there was my group of friends. And my group of friends changed as the years went on, and usually if people told me I was taking too many drugs, I'd move on to the next group that looked worse than I did. And none of this was a conscious decision, it's just when I reflect on it, that's how it was. And the friends that I was hanging out with all went to India, I guess it was mid-90s, and they all came back with heroin habits, and that's how it came into my circle of friends. And I did it occasionally. I drank every single night, I smoked weed every single night, or dope, hash it was back then. And I took heroin at the weekends, so therefore I've got a problem with nothing. I had absolutely no idea that whatever I put into my body will react in a way that it wants more of something. And I didn't learn that until, I came down here, and obviously the days got, the drink went out the window and the heroin took over, and that's how it was. And I ended up on a script, and I tried to stop and I couldn't stop, went to local drug services, and I don't know if I was fortunate the area that I was in. My dad thinks it was because we were from a good family. We weren't from a good family, maybe to the outside world, but it wasn't good inside, I can tell you. That I was helped. The doctor got me into the local drug service, and I was put on a methadone script, and I went into this treatment centre in the end. And I had tried meetings, but I didn't want to be abstinent. I wanted the heroin to stop, but I didn't want to stop everything else. And in the end I got into treatment, and that idea is I can still smoke. Surely I can still have a bit of weed. You really expect me to go for the rest of my life without taking anything? I find life hard without drinking drugs. Really hard. And you're expecting me to total abstinence. Maybe for you lot, but that's not what I need. I'm not really an addict of your type. I can control what I do. Anyway, I came down to treatment. I got into trouble for having an SR within a couple of weeks of being there. And and from there I could see that my behaviour was a serious problem, because when my counsellor pulled me up on it, he said, how do you feel? And I just wanted to go and get a bag of gear and be done with it. That's how I felt. And underneath that, I guess, was a lot of shame and where dishonesty and all that kind of thing can take me. So I complied the rest of the way through treatment, but I still had that idea in my head, I can still drink and I can still smoke, because I can control that. I don't know where I made that lie up from, because there was never any control. I was never without a bit of dope, ever. And I drank daily before the heroin took over. And, you know, I went through treatment, somehow graduated, and I came into the rooms thinking I was different, and I used again on the back of getting into a relationship. Drinking and using and being told to put that on the back burner. I don't think so. I really think that you need to go and I'll carry on doing what I want to do. And lo and behold, I did drink and use again, and I was out there again for 16 months. And what I didn't do was work these steps. 1 to 5 I worked. Anything else didn't apply to me. It applied to everyone else in the room, but not to me. And it was horrific. I'd had a child by that point. I was selling crack and heroin out of her pushchair. We were being stopped by the police every 5 minutes. And it was ruthless. My using back home was like a teddy bear's picnic. We looked out for each other. Down here, it was real nasty, frightening stuff. And I turned into, I don't know what, crack cocaine turns me into a monster. I was running with knives. I was just, my child would be in the front room spinning round in her walker with a room full of people smoking crack. I'd catch her with syringes in her hand. And to me that was normal. I'd open the window to make it okay. And I can look back at that and just wonder who the hell that was. But yeah, it was me. Social services involvement, and I knew that I hadn't given this a fair shout. So when I went into the local detox, which is no longer here, I did my detox, I came out, I got a sponsor, and I started working through these steps. I was still with a partner who was still using, because I wasn't ready to let go. And I didn't do treatment again, because I knew they'd be on me about getting rid of the partner, and I wasn't able to do what treatment centres wanted me to do. So I didn't go down that road a second time. And I worked these steps. I was at meetings every single day. I took my child to meetings. And she'd sit drawing at the back. And I had a home group from the off. I didn't know what that was. I just went to this meeting regularly because it was down the road. I could take my daughter and there was loads of toys there. She used to call it the toy meeting. And I started taking the actions that were prescribed. And I knew then, by that point, I knew from that relapse exactly what was wrong with me. And I knew that I couldn't safely use any drugs. I'd lost all sense of who I was. And since then I've worked really, really hard at my recovery. He eventually got clean. He was taking daily action. I was probably taking action about 3 days a week. And I was envious of what he had I was 2 years clean and he was 2 weeks clean, and he was out with newcomers. He should have been at home with me, making up for how he treated me. I had no idea what he was told not to share in meetings, which I said was breaking traditions, even though I hadn't read them. And I got a style of sponsorship which really suited me at the time. I got a sponsor that told me I need to take action daily. If I'm not taking action daily, I'm going to be in trouble. Now I've had the 3-4 days a week of taking action, and I've had daily action, and I know which is easiest for me is to continue to take the action, because once I stop I find it very, very hard to start again. and I unravel really quickly. I get resentful really quickly if I'm not on top of what I need to do, and that's just how I am. And I've had to continue to keep working this programme day in, day out, year in, year out, and I do that, thank you, a day at a time. And a day at a time I've racked up 21 years of recovery, which is just, not many people stay this long, do they? Not many people stay this long, and it's really sad, because each time I get to a tough bit in recovery and I think I can't go on, and I don't mean I want to use, for me it's I don't want to be here anymore. And each time I get through that tough bit, I think, thank God I didn't pick up, because it's got better each time. Or I didn't kill myself, because life's actually got better. This year has been a really tough year for me. My health has gone right downhill. I'm no longer working. My pride has taken the biggest kicking it's had probably over this year due to my health. And one of my things that I did in recovery was run. I will keep busy. There's lots of little things that I do to make myself feel better. Shopping. Seriously, I shopped. My ex-husband paid our debts off twice, and I racked them up again. The poor bloke. No wonder he didn't want to stay with me. Shopping is a big one. Now I've got no money, so that's less of a problem, but there's still a little bit of like, oh, I've got to do. And keeping busy. If I keep busy, then I don't need to feel. I don't need to look at what's going on. I've just got to keep taking these actions. Where I've been stopped in my tracks this year, there's been a lot going on underneath. Under the surface, there's been a lot going on that I perhaps should have dealt with a long, long time ago. For whatever reason, I didn't. And I'm now having to look at that stuff. So I'm having trauma therapy. I'm working the steps again. And I would have said 10 years ago, you don't need to work the steps multiple times. You just need to stay in 10, 11 and 12. And I believe that to be the truth until it wasn't my truth. Because unless I've experienced it, it isn't truth. I don't care what you say to me. I've got that mind that I'll decide. I'll be the last authority. Thankfully, I've always been sponsored. And that is... My sponsor is the one person that can guide me and tell me what to do. I don't take it off partners. I'm sorry about that, but I don't. They're usually right, but I do still have to check it out with my sponsor before I take the action. Even my children can be right. My oldest daughter is just... She was a pain in the arse when she was a teenager, and I just thought, oh my God. In fact, I've got 2 girls that are a pain in the arse. But she has grown into the most beautiful person, and she isn't afraid to tell me about myself. And she has got such a way of doing it. She's calm. She can be a fiery cracker. That's one C-Bob. She can be a fiery individual, but when, she just knows what to say. And she's always been like that. When I used to hate it when she looked at me. When I was using, when she was a baby, she'd look in my eyes and it was like she knew. It frightened me. And she's very, very wise for her years. And, all 3 of my kids are amazing in their own ways. The most difficult one has been my middle one, and this programme has enabled me to be a parent to my children. My parents weren't good parents. I haven't been a perfect parent. I've got lots of things wrong, but I've been there consistently because I've been clean. And that's one of the gifts that the programme's given me. I've been able to do many, many things, and I've had jobs that I've loved, and hopefully once I get on top of all the stuff that I'm having to work through at the moment, I'll be able to work again. What was I going to finish on? Relationships. You know, I've been married in recovery and separated in recovery. I find relationships really, really difficult. But the steps have enabled me to work on that, and enabled me to work on having healthier relationships with people than relationships that I've had in the past, which I've been in times for far too long. I've had a great life as a result of working these 12 steps consistently into my life. When the going gets tough, do more. My life is amazing. I'm going to Dubai next week. Dubai! And someone else is paid. Maybe because I deserve it. It doesn't feel like I do. I don't feel like I do inside, but there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, I do, I'm all right. And I'm working on that, I'm all right. And it's okay to be me, and that's what the 12 steps have given me. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Vicky.